This episode of the Flush Podcast is brought to you by North Dakota Tourism. Start planning your next hunting adventure in North Dakota at legendarynd.com. And by Onyx Hunt, the #1 GPS hunting map app. Onyx, know where you stand. Today, I'm taking a look back at 2020 and our very first year of Flush Podcasts. I'll explain how this podcast all started, what I've learned along the way, and where we're going. Plus, we'll remember some of our favorite stories from the field, guest conversations that left a lasting impression, discuss lessons learned, and give thanks for a year filled with wild bird flushes. Welcome to another episode of the Flush Podcast. I'm Travis Frank, your host. Brandon Morton is our producer. Today is a special episode. Well, maybe it's not really special, but it's different. I normally have a guest lined up to talk to and interview, but today I'm just going to be talking to you. Or I guess I'll be talking to myself. I feel like the new year gives us a time to self-reflect, and I want to do a little self-reflecting today. It was a little more than a year ago that the owner of our company, Scott Franzen, who is also one of the hosts on the Flush television show, told me that he wanted to add a podcast to our television show, The Flush. At first I said, I'll think about it. But if I'm being honest, I wasn't sure if I had what it took to entertain somebody for a half hour or an hour. I love podcasts personally. I listen to them all the time. But for me as a listener, I want to be entertained and educated, and I also enjoy great stories. I wasn't sure that I'd be able to host a podcast that would hold my own attention. And if I couldn't do that, then I wouldn't want to host my own. A few weeks later, Scott came back into my office and again said, "Hey, I want to do a Flush podcast. I just bought a podcast company. Have you given any more thought to being the host?" And I said, a little bit, but I'll think about it. Scott knows that I'm a perfectionist in my work, so I often think too hard about things instead of just doing them. But again, I wanted to make sure that I produced something of quality. A few weeks went by again, which brings us to the first week or two in January. And Scott and I were talking again, and he said, "Hey, I want the first Flush podcast done by the end of this week. You're the host." I said, all right. I'll give it a try. So that week in January of 2020, I sat down with Ron Schara, and we recorded the very first Flush podcast. I'd been a guest on a few podcasts prior, so I knew the drill. But this was my first podcast, my first chance to host it, to steer the ship, ask the questions. Brandon and I turned our conference room at our television office into a podcast room. And I don't remember if we put a do not enter sign on the door or not, but it was something along those lines. Then I had Ron sit down. I had, put some water out for him and a couple of snacks and put the headphones on, and he kind of looked at me shaking his head like, "What are you doing here?" But I asked Ron stories about his life growing up and how he got into hunting in the first place. I'm 36 years old, and Ron is, we'll just say, a little more than double my age, so he has quite a bit of wisdom on his side. He also has confidence from telling stories from more than 25 years. Actually, it's probably more than 35. He was an outdoor scribe for the Minneapolis Star-Tribune before he started his first television show called Minnesota Bound. Ron used to be an intimidating person for me to talk to because of all of his success. But Ron and I have become friends over the years, and we have a lot of the same interests and wisdom. He and I go to each other regularly to bounce ideas off each other. We do this in the fishing boat some days, and we do it in the office. Sitting down with him to interview him wasn't intimidating this time, but it was different to be the one steering a conversation that other people will eventually listen to. If you ask Ron, he would probably give the interview a rating of maybe 2 out of 10. I'd give it a 4 out of 10 because we never stopped recording that day. We never had to stop and do a second take. It was all a natural conversation, which was my goal at the beginning. I had a couple of bullet points laid out, but I never had any notes or questions. I like the idea of going into the conversation and seeing how it went without having pre-scripted questions. That way I could just talk to him. And that was my goal with this podcast, to just have conversations, kind of like I do with my hunting buddies. I feel like if I would record my conversations with hunting buddies, there would be a lot that others could learn from it, and it might be of interest. After I interviewed Ron, I interviewed Scott Franzen, and Scott shared his story. Scott shared about hunting highlights and personal struggles like losing his lab, Izzy. He talked about hunting with his daughters and taking his wife hunting for the first time. I always learn something from the people that I interview, and I'm hoping that you guys do too. My third conversation is one that never made it on the air. Tyler Webster is a man that I met a few years ago. I've had him on this podcast now a couple of times. He's the man that I actually got my dog Daisy from. We've shared a lot of personal stories together. Some on this show, some just Tyler and I in person or on the phone. We talk regularly. But the conversation that I recorded that day, the third one, never made it on the air. It was with Tyler's friend, Craig Jones. Craig was battling cancer. The year prior, I hunted with Craig at Tyler's place. That's where I met Craig. I had stayed in touch with Craig over the months since we hunted, but I knew his health was going downhill. At the time that we hunted together, the doctors had given him, well, basically, he had already exceeded the amount of time the doctors had given him based on the cancer that he had. The episode, the television show that we filmed with Craig, was set to air, and I wanted to see if he'd be willing to talk to me and record a podcast to update us on his health and how he was doing. I guess I was hoping that there would be some wisdom that he might be able to share just to help. I think just to encourage us in our daily lives. We lined up the show, hit the record button, and I gotta admit, that conversation was tough. It was too tough, in fact, for me to feel comfortable sharing it. Craig struggled to hear me, and I struggled to understand him. I was hoping to get wisdom from him on life that day, just one more time. But it turned out that I had already done that while we were in the field. To this day, that's the only conversation that I've recorded for this podcast that hasn't hit the air. It wasn't long after my conversation with Craig that his battle with cancer came to an end. I remember walking in the field with him, and I asked him what he was thinking about. And he just said, I'm not walking in the field thinking about what it'll look like when I come back, or how I'll hunt it differently, or where the birds will be next time. I'm just enjoying watching my dog hunt and enjoying everything out here for what it is today. That line has stuck with me, going on 2 years now. I'm the kind of bird hunter that always wants to outsmart the birds. I want to win. I'm a very driven hunter and a very driven person. I look at the land and I watch the birds so that if they outsmart me this time, I'll know what to do to outsmart them next time. Looking at a hunt the way that Craig does was something that I don't think I've ever done before. This hunting season, I carried Craig's words with me, while also continuing to soak up as much knowledge as my brain and body could handle. I still want to learn while on every hunt, but I also have to stop and look at what I have in front of me each and every day. Life is a gift, my friends. Like each hunting season, It goes way too fast for us not to stop and enjoy what's in front of us today. I pray that you are able to take a moment today to stop and look at what you have in front of you. It does not have to be in the field to make a difference. Tyler Webster, Ron Boehm, Matt Harding, Patrick Flanagan, and so many others. They all joined me the first few weeks to share their stories and relive our hunts in the field. Part of our podcast was created to tell new stories from the field, but our goal was also to make sure that the stories in our podcast matched up with the television shows that were airing. The idea would be to go further in depth on our podcast than we could do on the TV show. Because after all, we only have about 22 minutes of content that we can fit in the show. And we typically spend 3 to 4 days in the field with our guests. So there's so much more to explain than we have time for in the show. So our goal was to try to line up the podcast to match the TV show the best we could so we could provide more information. We plan a lot before we make it into the field, just like you do before you go on a hunt. And we wanted to talk about that. We wanted to explain things that we struggled with or things that we failed on and things that worked so that it could help you. I sincerely hope that our discussions have given you more information to help you become a better hunter. Ron Schara's beloved black lab Raven passed away in February of 2020. So I asked Ron to join me once again. We had an emotional conversation about his dog Raven, number 1, Raven number 2, and Raven number 3. My mom called me after she listened to that episode to let me know that she cried. Ron cried during that show, but he wasn't the only one. And my mom wasn't the only one that reached out. Many of you did the same. There's something that a dog does to us that most of us have trouble putting into words. Dogs are simply incredible creatures. They're loyal, loving, and best of all, they love to hunt more than we do. They're also parts of our family. Ron's story touched the lives of thousands. But if I actually stop to add it all up, I think Ron's and his dog impacted millions. Raven was the star of Ron's television shows, including The Flush, for more than 25 years. I can tell you from experience that wherever that dog went, people stopped. They came over. They said hello. That dog did what all dogs seem to do. They just love other people. I met Simon Titka and Ken Yang in a snow-covered field in western Minnesota. We filmed their story on a piece of public ground. Simon and Ken were first-time hunters that both chose to hunt because of the dogs that they were gifted. They were given. Ken was kind of an anti-hunter growing up, never hunting a day in his life. Simon grew up in Germany, and he also never hunted a day in his life. That all changed for both of those men when they were given a dog for free. The stipulation behind it, they had to take the dog hunting. Simon took his dog shooter hunting, and it drastically changed his life. Since that first day in the field, Simon and I have become hunting friends. If you listened to our podcast last week, you'll hear more of his story, plus our journey through South Dakota hunting on public lands. As for Ken, his love for hunting has been contagious with his friends. He started a hunting mentorship group, and he mentors middle-aged men and women and helps them get their hunter safety certificate, teaches them how to hunt, takes them into the field, and provides a mentorship role. My goodness, we need more people like Ken in this outdoor world. I interviewed Ken. I interviewed Simon. Those stories are available. If you want to go back, all of our podcasts are still available. Around the time that I recorded Ken and Simon's podcast, the world came to a drastic halt. COVID-19 forced us to quarantine, And like all of you, we had to find our new normal. Brandon Morton, our producer, stepped up big time, and we worked through kinks recording podcasts digitally. The sound quality wasn't always great, but we did our best battling through bog downs in internet speeds nationwide. We recorded our shows really early in the morning or late in the day so that we had the best internet bandwidth and hopefully eliminating skips in the audio. I listened to the shows just like you, and unfortunately, we had a lot of glitches. I thank you for sticking with us when you probably had better listening options. Our stories also shifted with the times. We covered topics relating to food. Our friends at Walton's Inc. gave us insight into their world, which, like so many of us, had been flipped upside down. They supply butchers and do-it-yourself meat processors like myself with all the tools to handle, prepare, and enjoy eating meat. We also brought in Rick Steckel from Federal to help us understand how they were continuing to make ammunition during the COVID pandemic. I don't have to tell you that the store shelves look different this year, but the reality is nothing has looked the same. The outdoor space, however, has grown considerably this year. I've seen reports that hunter numbers, license numbers in America are up as much as 10 to 15%. That's incredible. We'll see what happens next year and the year after, but there were a lot of seeds planted in souls, and hopefully, those seeds will grow into great hunters. Speaking of planting seeds in souls, Scott Kinane wrote me a letter this summer that I just couldn't put down. I responded to Scott, and then I invited him on the show, and he shared his personal story about growing up without a father and how he eventually became a hunter. His story hit home with me, and it hit home with many of you. I heard from a lot of you after he shared his hunting journey, and I've also stayed in touch with Scott. 2 days after our podcast with Scott hit the air, someone went into the Scheels store that Scott works at and said, "Scott, how do you pronounce your last name?" Scott said, "Kinane." And the shopper said, "Are you the Scott that was just on the Flush podcast?" He kind of chuckled and said, "Yep." And the shopper, along with his son, shook Scott's hand and thanked him for sharing his story. He then proceeded to share his own story about becoming a hunter for the first time this year. After knowing Scott's story, they both hit it off in the store, and Scott eventually invited him out hunting to help that first-time hunter and his son learn the ropes. When I hear these kind of stories, I can't help but stop for a moment and appreciate our hunting community. Really, I can't help but appreciate each of you. I produce 4 different television shows, and the upland bird hunting community far and away provides me the most feedback. I can't even begin to count the number of friendships I've made with bird hunters all over the country. The letters, the messages, I shouldn't say letters, but emails, social media messages, phone calls that I get after every television show, after every single podcast goes out. I love talking with you, learning your stories, and finding out from you what I can do to help educate and inspire you on this show. Please keep those ideas coming. Please keep the conversation coming. My goal on this show is to educate, entertain, and hopefully inspire. If there are things that I can do to help you, I want to know about it. So again, thank you so much for all of the messages that you've sent. In spite of all the challenges we all face this year, our friends at North Dakota Tourism decided to take a chance and support this podcast. They were the first to step up and help us bring these episodes to you. And for that, I say a great big thank you to North Dakota Tourism. Many times, TV, radio, and podcast hosts have to endorse products and companies that they may not always use or know much about. I'm thankful to have North Dakota tourism support because it's a place that I love to hunt for so many reasons, and I've done it most of my entire life. And it just so happens that their bird numbers exploded this year. It's been a great year to tell you all about the opportunities available out there. I don't have an exact number, but I heard from dozens of you that your hunts in North Dakota this season were also exceptional. I'll just say this. If we can make it through this winter without losing birds, and we have a solid nesting season, next hunting season in North Dakota might be the best one you will ever experience in your life. And I mean that. I've given you this information every week this year, so how about one last time in case you haven't heard it enough? This season, North Dakota's annual roadside counts for pheasants observed per 100 miles were up 38%, sharptails were up 54%, and Hungarian partridge were up 45%. And with an estimated 4 million breeding ducks up 18% this year, North Dakota's central region is prime habitat for both hunting waterfowl and upland birds. Plus, North Dakota has more than 700,000 acres of private land open to public walk-in hunting. For the latest plots guide, visit the North Dakota Game and Fish Department or legendarynd.com. Since I'm giving North Dakota a plug, Onyx deserves one too. They were the second company that decided to support this podcast. Besides my shotgun, shells, boots, and a dog, the Onyx Hunt app is the most helpful tool that I can bring into the field. I use it every single day that I go hunting, and my library of information in the app keeps on growing. Some of my friends have dropped thousands of waypoints into their app. I don't have quite that many, but I'm slowly catching up. The Onyx app gives you the information that you need to stay on the ground that you have permission to hunt. It shows you land boundaries, both public and private. It shows exactly where you stand on the ground. It also gives landowner names in case you want to stop and ask for permission. It is a huge tool when I'm traveling to new areas because I can zoom way out and look at entire counties of land or regions, and it shows me little tiny dots of public land options. Then I zoom in for a closer look, and I can dissect the property and make my game plan. I know some of the techs at Onyx personally, and they continue to tell me that they're adding features to the app that will help us. They are hunters. They get it. They know what we need. They're doing a great job. Now, there are new features added to the app recently, like forecasts and wind directions for the property. Basically, my app has become a living journal that I'll continue to use for years to come. If you haven't tried the Onyx Hunt app, I highly recommend you download it before your next hunting adventure. They give you a free trial, so you'll be able to test it out while on the road. My guess is that you'll become a lifelong user like every other hunter that I hit the field with. Onyx, know where you stand. I talked to dozens of guests this season, but two conversations really stood out to me. The first was my conversation with Darrell Smith. I talked to Darrell a couple of times while the George Floyd riots were rocking our country. Darrell is a black man that lives in Atlanta, Georgia. He shared what it's like to be a black man in a hunting world dominated by white men. His story was difficult to hear because he was very candid and descriptive with his personal experiences. Experiences that I'll never encounter because of the color of my skin. Darrell explained that he's always nervous while driving to his hunting locations because he's a black man with guns in his vehicle. Even though he can legally have guns, it doesn't change how he feels about having them with him because of the encounters he's had with police in the past. Encounters that I simply can't fathom. Darrell also explained that he gives his wife the GPS coordinates for exactly where he will be hunting. When I asked him why, he said because black men in the woods that come across the wrong white man with a gun can disappear. That's hard to hear. If I let that sink in for a moment, it really sends chills down my spine. In your lifetime, have you ever given someone the location that you were going to be hunting because there was a chance that somebody might shoot you? I cannot even imagine what that would feel like. Yet, in spite of this, Darrell is making a name for himself in the hunting community. He's writing for Project Upland, training dogs, and has his own podcast called The Gun Dog Notebook. I urge you to listen to Darrell's story if you haven't already. We recorded it, I believe, back in June. What's that? You did what, honey? You did a ballerina dance? That's wonderful, sweetheart. Okay, I will hear all about it in just a minute. I can't wait, sweetheart. Yep. Thank you. And that right there is what continues to happen in 2020. I am currently made a home office that I recorded my shows out of, and my kids have come in more times than I can count. My little daughter just finished her first ballerina practice, and I can't wait to hear about it. But I also know the importance of what I was just telling you about with Darrell. I urge you to listen to his story if you haven't already. We recorded it, I believe it was back in June, and the episode, I believe, is titled Hunting for Change. Sam Daly is another guest that touched my life. Sam is a dog trainer in Minnesota. He's also a hero. Sam was recruited by the U.S. Army to train dogs that led soldiers on the front lines in Afghanistan and Iraq. Sam trained dogs to sniff out explosives hidden that were intended to blow up American soldiers. Some of his dogs ultimately gave their lives to save our soldiers. His real stories from his time in service were both heroic and at times difficult to stomach. Today, Sam has taken it upon himself to continue training dogs for both hunters and also soldiers that are struggling in life. Some have anxiety, others suffer from PTSD from their time at war. Sam trained service dogs that help these soldiers get through days and night, one at a time. Since our podcast interview with Sam, I've been able to spend several days with him. I saw his training operation firsthand and met several of the veterans that he's trained dogs for. Sam's dogs are trained to do things like wake up a person that is experiencing a night terror. They flip on the light, go over, pull the covers off of that person, and they go and comfort them so that that veteran doesn't wake up in a violent response. They are calming for these veterans. They have changed their lives. They have allowed these vets to stop taking medication. And now many of them live a somewhat normal life again. I met Sam and I met the veterans. Their stories were very heavy, but they were real as hell. Sam's mission is, in one word, incredible. This fall, I joined him and those veterans in South Dakota for a pheasant hunt. And it's my hope that their story moves you as much as it does me, because we were able to film it for an episode of The Flush that will air this coming summer. Sam's organization is called Believe It. Believe and the word vet put together. Believe It. Here's their mission statement. To empower the military men and women who have served and sacrificed for our country. Our goal is to help them return to civilian life with dignity and independence. Believe It Canine Service Partners provide highly skilled service dogs free of charge to disabled veterans. In doing so, we dedicate ourselves to the noble service of strengthening lives. Sam's podcast remains, just like all the rest of them, in our list. That one, I want to say, was back in probably June as well, May or June. I'm trying to think. I believe we called it Sam Daly. Actually, let me look here. Believe It. That was the name of the podcast. Believe It. This summer was the year of the puppy. For the first time in my life, I was finally in a position to get my own. Tyler Webster had a little puppy that he offered to me and my family. After a 9-hour drive that turned into close to 20 with my wife and our 3 kids, we made it to Tyler's house and met the white rocket that we affectionately named Daisy. I'll be honest, there was nothing that could prepare me for this dog. She is so sweet and at the same time so bold and full of prey drive that you would think it's impossible to fit both into one dog. I began training her with the help of my bird hunting buddy, George Lyle. George has some of the most incredible dogs that I've ever hunted behind, so I've trusted him. He's become a mentor for me. He trains with Rick Smith and uses the Hunt Smith system. Daisy was already 5 months old when I got her, and she grew up in a completely different environment than the one that I live in. At Tyler's, she had a quiet country setting at the end of a long gravel road on the short grass prairie in northwestern North Dakota. She had freedom there and the ability to run. When I brought her to my house, she continued to run the second she would get loose. She one time dragged my 6-year-old son across the yard while he held on to the end of the rope until he couldn't hold on to it anymore. Those same 500-yard hot laps on the prairie would take her across 2 highways and 3 neighborhoods at my place in Minnesota. If I'm being honest, it was a very stressful transition. Slowly, Daisy and I grew our bond, and I started to see results from our training. But it felt like 1 step forward and 2 steps back. I studied the training information that George taught me and gave me, and I trained with Daisy morning, day, and night every single day. At Tyler's, she was already pointing birds at 5 months old before we picked her up. The dog knew how to hunt, but what she didn't know was how to hunt with me. I made a lot of mistakes, and I'm still making them today. But I'm learning, and I feel like I've come a long way. I've also struggled a lot. I'm in a line of work that gives a lot of people a view into what I'm doing. I had, and still do have, a lot of people telling me what they think I should be doing with my dog. I know everybody means well, but I quickly learned that I needed to have very thick skin and stand by my training process. Mixing things up with Daisy would only complicate her growth and my growth and also hurt it. Our first hunt was scary as hell. After working day and night every day since I got her, the time came to let her off the leash and walk in the field with her. To make everything even more stressful, a video camera followed our every move. In the Badlands of North Dakota, the first hunt with my dog Daisy ended with her finding a very thick pile of sludge Badlands mud and coming back coated. By the time she came back, it had already dried. She could barely move her body. After washing her off, our afternoon hunt ended with a scare. While we were tending to one of George's dogs that had been hit by a porcupine, Daisy accidentally jumped a deer, and my little dog began a chase. She disappeared into a massive canyon about 900 yards away. Eventually, the GPS signal stopped, but that was really the only reason we had hope at all. After more than a half hour of searching for that signal that was no longer moving, the thoughts in my mind: did a mountain lion get her? What could have possibly happened? Did she fall off a cliff? The doubts were creeping in my mind as I reached the bottom of a canyon, and I found her lying 5 feet below the ground at the bottom of a 1-foot wide crack in the earth. She ran herself into complete exhaustion, and the mud must have felt good on her body. That was the first of many interesting puppy events this year. And, of course, you'll be able to watch as all of my failures unfold on camera. I'm a first-time dog owner, and all of my hunts have been recorded for national television. I can already picture the messages that are going to come in when that show hits the air, but I've promised all along that I'll stay real with everybody and explain things as they happen. I'm learning, and in order for us to learn, we must fail, right? Well, I failed again and again and again, but damn it, did I learn a lot. And so did my dog. She turned into a rock star hunter as the season went along, pointing birds and bringing them back to my hand after I flushed them inches from her rock solid pointing snout. Yeah, she messed up a few times and still does, but she's still a puppy. And I've been told by many of you that I need to lower my expectations. I'm a work in progress, and so is my dog Daisy, but her future is bright, way brighter than mine. She's currently curled up next to me on her dog pad taking a nap. But the second I stand up from this chair, she'll jump up and head for the door, hoping that we're heading back out into the field. This fall, we filmed television shows in Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, and many other places. It seems that everyone is excited to turn the page to the new year of 2020. We all lived through one of the most challenging years in history. We don't know what our future holds, but I do know that we all have a lot to be thankful for. I'm thankful for you taking the time to listen to me, a simple-minded hunter that was given a platform to speak about things that I love. I love God, my family, my friends, and I love to hunt. I try not to take anything for granted, my health or the opportunities that I've been given, the friendships that I've made, and the time that I get to spend in the field. The Flush television show just wrapped up airing our 16th season of production on the Outdoor Channel. I can hardly believe that we've had viewership support for that many years, but I just heard yesterday that our ratings this season look like they'll be an all-time high. We still have a couple weeks from the 2020 year that we're waiting to hear back from the Nielsen ratings, but so far the numbers have been remarkable. To each one of you, I thank you. Everybody on our team thanks you. I get to talk to you on this podcast every week, but there's an entire team that works hard to put our television shows together. Ron Shera, Bill Shirk, Scott Franzen, along with our cameramen, Aaron, Kyle, Pete, Troy, Ben, Eric, Jason, and more. They're the ones that bust their butts each time we hit the road. They carry a 20 or 30 pound camera on their shoulders and vests that are weighted down with batteries and tripods and camera gear. They follow us for miles and miles, up mountains, down valleys, through cattails, in snow, in wind, rain, and hot prairies when temps skyrocket and sweat runs down their back, and snakes jump up from the grass. Rattlesnakes. They camped with us on the prairie this year and walked the extra mile to get that one last flush from a wild bird that we knew was at the end of the field. Even when the birds never came up, they didn't complain. Our cameramen deserve all the credit for making our shows come to life. We hunt wild birds in wild places, and there are no redos when a bird flushes wild and we don't capture it on camera. It's the real deal, and we're always simply trying our best. In spite of COVID, we hunted hard this year. We camped on prairies to safely film shows, and for the most part, we stayed close to our home base in Minnesota. On a normal year, we'd be hoping to expand south, west, east, and north, but this year was unique, and we just simply did our best with the conditions that we were given. Fortunately, bird numbers in the Midwest were outstanding this year, and we're going to have some of the all-time birdiest episodes coming to the Outdoor Channel in just 6 months. My goal when this podcast, was to educate, entertain, and inspire. I hope we've done that, and I hope we'll continue to do that. As always, I want to hear from you. If you have stories, feedback, ideas, or questions, please let me know. If you have them, it's likely that other hunters have those same questions too. If you have guests that you'd like me to interview, please let me know. Just go to theflush.tv and send us a message on the contact form, or you can find us on social media by searching Instagram or Facebook for The Flush TV. Starting this week, our first television episode of the 2020 season, which was last year, has been uploaded to our Flush YouTube channel. I've heard from a lot of you that this is the way that you get your TV shows now, so your wait is finally over. We'll upload a new episode each week until the entire season has been added to our channel. This week's show is a special show that I filmed in South Dakota with my wife. It was her first time hunting, and the experience is something that I'm pretty sure I won't be able to top. I watched that show again twice this week, both times full of gratitude for the opportunity to take her to such an incredible place and for her willingness to join me. I've said this many times this year, and I'll say it again now. If you have the chance to take your wife or your girlfriend or your children into the field with you, please do it. You may change their lives and ultimately change yours for the best. My first time pheasant hunting was on public land with a friend's dog that ran away and chased all the birds several hundred yards out of range. We never fired a shot that day, but it didn't matter. He planted a seed that day that continues to grow in my soul. You have the ability to do the same for others. So if the opportunity is there, I urge you to take them. Fail with them, learn with them, and love every damn second you get to walk in the fields and forests with them. As I've been reminded several times this year, life is a gift, and each day holds an opportunity to make a memory. Thank you for joining us on our journey through the upland. Here's to 2020 being the best year of hunting that we've ever had. Once again, thank you to North Dakota Tourism for helping us to make this show possible. To bag your limit next season in North Dakota, visit legendarynd.com. And don't forget to download the onX map to help plan your hunting adventures and find those pieces of property that are open to the public and full of wild birds. Current episodes are airing now on our YouTube channel. Head to YouTube and search for The Flush, then subscribe to our channel so you never miss a single episode. Thank you for following us for our first season of the Flush Podcast. Here's to another. I hope you'll join us next week for another episode of the Flush Podcast.